in Ethiopia. They never occupied and dominated and conquered Ethiopia totally. And that's because King Menelik understood he needed more than just spirituality, because a lot of the Africans in other parts of Africa, they depended on their spiritual system. But when you're dealing with a group of people like the white supremacists who were not spiritual at all, you're going to lose. So King Menelik, he used his spirituality, but he understood that he had to be practical. So King Menelik, he got guns that rivaled the guns of his enemies. And when the Italians came into Ethiopia to try to defeat him, King Menelik used his guns and used his weaponry to fight them off.
What Ethiopia was able to achieve was nothing short of military genius. They struggled certainly with Italy for maintaining their independence. But I think what they were able to do was to use the land to their advantage. They were able to strategize, and they really outthought the enemy. And they were underestimated, let's face it. I think they were their military power was underestimated.
And so when you had all of this in the psyche of a people, this notion of empire and kingdoms and defending ourselves against the Greek army, the Roman army, the Turkish army, the Persian armies, what's some little rinky-dink Italians? We can handle this, and they handled it.
And when King Menelik in Ethiopia defeated the Italians, what's interesting, the Western media started to portray King Menelik as a white man. So this man was clearly a black African brother. There was pictures of him in the whole nine, but the Western media started to show cartoons and images of him as being white because they didn't want to let the world see that the European had been defeated by this African man.
Traditional African religions, particularly the one from ancient Egypt and Sudan, venerated this idea called Ma'at. And Ma'at, roughly speaking, you could translate it as truth, as justice, as righteousness, as reciprocity. The problem is when you're being attacked by people who don't believe any of that, and you are trying to do the Ma'atic thing, they will beat you, unfortunately. And this is one of those harsh lessons that the black community is still to learn.
The assumption that another group's view of humanity is the same as ours. The assumption that another group's understanding of divinity is the same as ours. The African moved from the premise that everybody was a brother, and thus should be treated and accorded that kind of brothership and brotherhood. The European moved from a position that what is mine, and what is yours is mine if I can take it. You had a war culture coming in contact with an agrarian culture. The war culture is always going to win because the war culture doesn't put any value on human life. And that means it has no barometer to how much death and destruction it will carry out.
People talk about the greatness of Africa, and we see some of the great empires that we had over in Africa. And naturally, a lot of people will say, okay, if we had all these great empires, where did Africa go wrong? There's several situations that happened. One thing that happened with Africa, you had Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa, according to most historians, a West African black man who was a king in the area that we know as Mali and Timbuktu, the wealthiest man to ever live. And Mansa Musa's situation was a gift and a curse because Mansa Musa, he went around the world basically just giving out gold. This man had so much money, he could give money away. And he gave so much money out, it decimated certain economies in other nations. So it showed the humanity of the African people and the generosity of the African people, but you showed people that you had all of this wealth, so now people are plotting on you. So when people saw Mansa Musa giving out all that money, he became lunch to everybody else. So Africa started to get raided and flooded with all types of people trying to take advantage of the wealth and the resources that were in Africa.
The tide